Hi guys, Jackie from Famished Farm. I'm back this week making recipes from my decades-old recipe stash. I'm using a meal planner to keep me within budget. What I'm doing each week is I'm plotting out what I'm going to have for each of the 7 days, and then I compare it to what's already in my pantry, in my freezer, and maybe down in my canning shelves. That way I can stick to my retirement budget. That's the whole point of this meal planner experiment for the year of minimal me. What did we make this week? First up was a recipe from Eating Well magazine for a toasted coconut shrimp and noodle bowl. We ended up not making a bowl. We just kind of mixed everything together. But guys, this one was delicious. If you eat shrimp, try it. Next up from foodnetwork.com is a grilled pork chop recipe. And why I picked this one is it called for apple juice. And I've got several cans of frozen apple juice in my freezer, so that would be a good way to use that up. I can tell you guys that I messed up the filming on the second half of this, so I didn't have any film from the grilling end of things, but I'll try to find some footage online, or I'll try to get a still picture of what the recipe looked like when it was completed. It was delicious. And finally, from Real Simple magazine, for breakfast for dinner night, we made a lemon poppyseed sheet pan pancake. It's cooking right now. It smells heavenly. And then for dessert, an apple cinnamon chia pudding. And I'm really excited about this one because I have a ton of chia seeds in the cupboard that need to get used up. So guys, come on, let's get cooking. This one claims a 20-minute prep time, so it does say the key is having all your ingredients prepped and ready to go by the stove. Let's see how I did. I'm off to a good start. I remembered to thaw the Walmart brand shrimp, and this is just a 12-ounce bag, not a 1-pound bag. And then the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. I'm just going to do 1 tablespoon of that. If you are not carb sensitive, go ahead and do the 2, but I'll just settle at 1. You're going to divide your soy sauce here. This is low sodium soy sauce, just a tablespoon. And then we'll mix this together and then just set that to the side. Now, I also remembered to start the water for the noodles. The recipe calls for vermicelli rice noodles, which I don't have. I do have some angel hair regular pasta, so I'm just going to use that instead. Just follow your package directions for cooking this. I'm going to give it a stir, and then we'll let this kind of do its thing on the stovetop. Back at the cutting board, we've got a yellow pepper. It does specify yellow. I went ahead and bought a yellow for this recipe. If you only have green, no worries, just use it. We're going to thinly slice that. And it calls for snow peas, and I was lucky to find some sugar snap peas, which I'm just going to substitute instead. And you guys cut the ends off these. This did take several minutes to do. Let me know if you keep yours on. Here's my pasta done, and I'm just going to drain that and then stick it back in the pan with just a little bit of olive oil and give that a fluff, and then that will be ready when we're ready for the noodles. And then back over at the cutting board, did you notice I got these snow pea or sugar snap peas on special? They were clearance. They were in really good shape, so no worries on that. Just look at them really good when you buy them. So we're going to finish cutting the ends off these. They've been washed, of course. We're going to add a 1/2 cup of chicken broth. I'm using my homemade bone broth instead. You do you. Doesn't make any difference. And then we're going to add peach jelly instead of the apricot jelly that the recipe calls for. You'll need 2 tablespoons. Consider microwaving this, and it melts it a little bit, makes it easier to incorporate. I just didn't want to take the time or dirty the dish to do that. Then we need a tablespoon of chili sauce and the remaining 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And then we'll give that a mix. Oops, don't forget the sesame oil. Add a teaspoon in. That's all the recipe calls for. And honestly, that's all I ever add to any of the Asian dishes I make that call for it. We'll use our whisk to break up that jelly. And then we're going to set this aside also. Back over, we're using our high heat oil for our coconut, and this is organic, unsweetened, and I recommend cutting this back. Instead of the half a cup the recipe calls for, we're just going with a cup. Again, diabetics, so we do a little less sweet generally. And you're just going to want to brown this. So don't be me and completely walk away and almost burn it. I come back just in the nick of time. We'll get this onto a plate. And I didn't put a paper towel on the plate, so I come back later and kind of flip this toasted coconut onto the paper towel. We'll add a little oil back into our pan. And then we're going to take, oh, there I am trying to get the coconut oil onto the paper towel, the coconut. And we're just going to saute our shrimp now. And this is a very quick process. You're on high heat here. And again, don't walk away because shrimp only takes a couple minutes to cook. And when you're done cooking the shrimp, you're just going to want to transfer that to a plate or a bowl. In my case, I could have just thrown it in with the spaghetti that is still warming in the pan, but I did dirty a different bowl. Then back in the wok, we're just going to do another shot of our high heat oil, and then we're going to add our veggies, and we're just going to give these a quick saute until they're tender crisp. The recipe says 2 to 3 minutes, and honestly, I'm pretty sure I did this longer than that. We do like them a little crunchy, but hot all the way through, definitely. You're still on high heat here, so don't go too far. And there you can see my pretty fish bowl that I'm going to use for tonight's dinner. I just like using that bowl, guys. Okay, guys, so then you're going to go ahead and add your sauce to the veggies that you're cooking, and then just cook these up. You want to do this until the sauce starts to thicken and it will glaze the vegetables. That'll take 2-3 minutes. They say 1 to 2 minutes. Do it as long as you feel is necessary. So the shrimp is supposed to go in when the sauce goes in, and you'll see I've been getting pulled a few different directions tonight, so things are not going as planned. I'm going to go ahead and just throw everything in together. So the noodles, the shrimp, and once the shrimp hits the sauce, then that's really when that sauce is going to start to thicken up. The cornstarch will help that. And here, everything's cooked, so you're good to go, but I'm just making sure everything is evenly distributed throughout noodles and veggies. And then I've got my pretty bowl on standby. I'm just going to put everything in my pretty bowl. So remember the coconut that you fried up or you toasted up? Don't forget that. You're going to put that over the top of your dish before serving. And there you have it, guys. That was dinner. It was delicious. We will keep this in the rotation. Here it is plated on my pretty Fiesta-ware plates. And I hope you guys enjoy this recipe as much as we did. I will tell you that, you know, if sodium's an issue, you may want to cut back on the soy sauce a little bit. You could easily cut out 1 of the tablespoons and probably half of the soy sauce without impacting the taste. This was really good, guys. Our grilled pork chops had a couple different ingredients in the marinade that I really like the sound of. I'm starting here with, I'm going to only use half of the olive oil the recipe calls for. We found that there's generally too much oil. It just creates flare-ups in the grill. Then we're going to squeeze in 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard that comes right out of the cup thanks to the oil. And I'm not going to dilute this apple juice, so I'm just roughly going to give it 2 spoonfuls of apple juice, and we're going to call that 2 tablespoons. Then we're going to do our lemon, and you're going for a teaspoon of lemon zest. That's probably more than a teaspoon. No worries, it'll work. And then we'll juice this lemon. I just use my little sieve there to catch the seeds. I've got some parsley still in the garden, so we'll go ahead and do a rough chop on this. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, and I'm pretty close to that there. Now, we are doing just 2 pork chops. The recipe does call for 4 bone-in or boneless pork chops. We have really been enjoying the bone-in chops, and we've been buying thick ones all summer. They just they keep the flavor and the moisture. The chops with the bone-in just don't dry out unless you just really, really overcook them. So these chops are going to go into our marinade, which I've forgotten the salt and the pepper. So I use just a little bit of salt, some pepper, and then I don't have garlic cloves, so I'm just going to use garlic powder. And that's going to marinate in the fridge all afternoon. For the apple mango chutney, we're going to start by slicing and then dicing half an onion. It calls for a Vidalia. I only have yellow onions right now, so that's what we'll use. Then over on the stovetop, we've got a small saucepan, and we're going to add a tablespoon of olive oil, roughly, and we'll put that on medium-high heat. Once your oil is nice and hot, you'll go ahead and add your diced onions and give them a stir. And you're just cooking these till they're softened. So that'll take 2 or 3 minutes. Don't go far though, because that is pretty high heat. While that continues to cook, I'm going to take 2 of our apples here. And these, I'm not sure what variety they are, because I just got them at Aldi. So whatever they were very good. Oh, Sweet Tango. Does that sound familiar? I think that's what these are. And just prepare them. Core them, peel them, chop them. The recipe does suggest using Gala or Pink Lady. I usually have Galas in the house, but this time I just happen to have a different variety. So rounding out the spices that are going to be used in this chutney is a cinnamon stick, which I'm going to just use powdered cinnamon, dry powdered cinnamon instead of the cinnamon stick, and some ground cumin. That sounded like a really cool combination. A little warmth and just the goodness of cinnamon. So our onions are done on the stovetop. We're going to add some frozen mango. I just bought some of the organic chunked mango from Walmart. We're going to add that. That's going to take a few minutes to thaw. And then we're going to use a couple tablespoons more of this apple juice. And again, I'm not diluting it. Do whatever you like. And guys, just a note, you might want to leave that lemon peel I just added as a big chunk if you would like to pick that out. Fortunately, I could only find one of the 2 pieces when I went to pick it out. And that's because I just put 2 little slivers in, as you saw. So make them big so you can see them if you're going to pull that out. And then we're going to do just a little bit of juice that's left in the lemon that I already did. Here's our sprinkle of cinnamon. We've got a tablespoon of sugar, and then that cumin. So this mixture you're going to cook over medium heat. Now you want this to become just soft and kind of bubbly. It will take 15-20 minutes to do that. I think I pulled it off the heat after 15 minutes. It was perfectly fine at 15, and I just kind of let it continue cooking in the pan. Then you'll want to remove your lemon peel and your cinnamon stick if you use that instead of the powdered cinnamon. It says your chutney, once you've cooked it, it can be stored for up to a week in an airtight container. And this does make quite a bit. You could probably make half the recipe and be just fine. I certainly could have, but we'll find another use for the chutney. Here's the bowl I'm going to put it in, and then it will go right into the fridge. This must have been quite the day, because I have no video of the actual grilling process or plating these pork chops, so things must have got really out of hand. But This was very good, and this, guys, is going to go into the rotation at least till I use up all that apple juice, and I hope you'll give it a try because it was really good. And if you know of another use for chutney, let me know. As you can see from this image from Food Network, they do have a video on how to make it on their website too, if you want to know exactly how Carde Brown does it. Our next recipe calls for coating an 11 by 13 baking sheet with cooking spray, line it with parchment paper. Now I'm going to switch that around a little bit, and let's put the parchment paper in first and then spray it. In the bowl, we're going to start with 2 cups of flour, and that was a 1/4 cup of poppy seeds, 1 tablespoon of our baking powder. Mine is really getting chunky down in the bottom of my container there. And then just a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Then a little bit of salt. And we're just going to basically use a whisk and just make sure all these dry ingredients are incorporated. We'll pull out a second bowl and get started on the wet ingredients. That's 4 eggs. And then it calls for whole milk. This is a 1/4 cup measure. I'm going to do 5 of these to make a 1 1/4 cups. We're going to use our granulated sugar, and it calls for a 1/4 cup. And I think I did do the full 1/4 cup on that. Now, get you out 4 lemons, get them washed, and then we're going to do a bunch of zesting. In this case, I'm going to zest fully 3 lemons, and we're going to just call that a tablespoon of zest from each one of those. So this is going to take a few minutes, guys, so we're going to speed through that, of course. I had just bought these lemons that day, and I was so happy when I got to the store and they were not all rock hard. I found 4 beautiful lemons ready to squeeze. So once you've got your 3 tablespoons of zest in, then we're going to go ahead and zest the lemons that are already de-zested. We're going to juice those lemons. And I'm just going to do it right into a measuring cup because we want a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And guys, this recipe, don't use the condensed lemon juice. Just go ahead and get fresh lemons and do it that way. This turns out to be perfectly and utterly delicious. I'm glad it filled our freezer with some pancakes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mix that mixture up so far, but we still have some vanilla to add and some ricotta cheese. But we're going to get the eggs at least mixed up well. And then we've got a teaspoon of vanilla. And sticking with the whole milk theme, we've got an 8-ounce carton of whole milk ricotta. And we'll just kind of use the whisk to get that separated and then whisk that together. Then to this wet mixture, you're going to go ahead and add your flour mixture. And use your whisk. It says to stir until no visible flour streaks remain and that the dough may be still slightly lumpy. And that was pretty much my experience. So guys, here's my actually 11 by 17 sheet pan and slightly undersized parchment paper, which I've wadded up so it will accept this without too much trouble. And this was the perfect size parchment paper and the perfect size cookie sheet. This worked out just really perfectly. And just spread that out so the mixture is even. And then we've got our oven that's preheated to 400 degrees. You're going to cook this for 10 to 12 minutes. And I did the full 12 minutes. And then you broil it for 3 minutes. And this is what it looked like on the plate. We could hardly contain ourselves to get a picture, so I apologize the picture's not prettier. But it was delicious. We served this with a hash brown on the side too, so heavy carb night that was appreciated and delicious. So I always test recipes like this for company recipes. If I'm having anybody come into town, this would be a great recipe for that. It also gives you directions for adding 2 cups of blueberries to a 1/4 cup of maple syrup and making some blueberry syrup instead. We just opted for sugar-free syrup. And our final recipe from the same issue of Real Simple magazine was for this chia seed pudding. And if you've watched my videos from the beginning, there is a video where I talk about my overstocks in the pantry, and one of those things happens to be chia seeds. So here we go. Now I've started on the stovetop with, I'm just making a half recipe, 1½ cups of milk, and I've added, instead of the cardamom pod and the cinnamon stick, I'm just going to use a sprinkle of each of those and call it even. You're just going to simmer that. You're going to cook it until it reaches a simmer, and then you're going to remove that from the heat and just let it steep for 20 minutes. Now, if you use the pods and the sticks, you'll have to drain the mixture. Since I'm not doing that, I won't have to worry about it. Here I am with my Greek yogurt, and I'm making half a recipe, I'm reminding myself, so I need to take out a ½ cup of that yogurt that I just threw in the bowl. And then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, and then a full tablespoon of vanilla. And don't skip on either of those, guys. It's worth it. It does call for 2 tablespoons of creamy nut butter, which I decided to go with almond butter on this. This I did have to purchase. It's not something I usually keep in my shelves, but I will use it for baking and other uses coming up. And you could also put this in a small dish, that peanut butter, and warm that up a little. It will be a little easier to incorporate. I'm just going to use my little mandarin orange. It calls for, let's see, a teaspoon of zest, which is what we're barely going to get out of this little mandarin orange, but whatever was in there, you could taste it, and it was good. We're going to mix this up, and I'm kind of working through the chunky peanut butter there, or almond butter, and I pulled out my bigger whisk to get the job done. We'll put some saran on that and then put that in the fridge, and that will stay for 4 hours minimum, up to 5 days as it's thickening in the fridge. Now, I highly recommend for the first 15 minutes of the time that this is going to be setting to come back to it every couple of minutes, like every 5 minutes. Just set your timer and break up the seeds because they will want to clump together. So if you do that for the first 15 minutes, the chia seeds will start to set up after that, and they'll be just fine. But definitely whisk it a bit to start. And guys, I'm going to try to find a picture of this completed because unfortunately we did not save one again. So let me go search for that. Real Simple recommends that you serve this with apples, figs, sliced almonds, sprinkle it with more cinnamon and maple syrup. Doing that, just adding the apples, this is just not something we're going to put on the rotation. We are just not big chia pudding fans. It was good, we ate it, but it's not something that Rod would request again. I hope you've enjoyed this content. Please leave me a message down below in the comments. If you have favorite recipes that your family, your family is using over and over on your rotation, I'd love to know what they are. Guys, join me again next week. We'll have some more recipes from the recipe stash, and let's hope there's some good ones that can go into the rotation. Thanks for being here.